I finally decided to invest in an egg incubator, and the one I got is the Nurture Right 360. I'm going to show you that today and tell you the pros and cons of this incubator. I'm Kelsey from roughandtumblefarmhouse.com, where every single week I share videos about farming, family food, and fortitude here on our 5-acre homestead in northern Minnesota. So here is the incubator right here. So it's the Manna Pro Nurture Right 360, so it's got kind of a long name. And it's a smaller incubator, which is part of the reason why I went with this one. I like the size. It only does 22 eggs at a time, which is a smaller amount considering kind of the more standard you're used to if you've done kind of those Incubator type ones, is 44 eggs at a time. But I like that this one fits really nice and neat on my counter. It also has a really nice look. I mean, it kind of has a little bit of a space agey sort of look to it, so it looks attractive on your counter. It has this nice big open area, which makes it really nice for viewing your eggs. However, I would say that this is a little bit of a negative in terms of the incubator. I've hatched lots of chicks. I used to be a 4-H coordinator, and so every spring I was hatching out chicks with 4 different area schools. So I've hatched hundreds of chickens using those bigger foam-sided ones. And this one, I noticed for the first time ever that the chicks seemed to be kind of stressed, and they would sort of pace around the outside of it. So what I actually ended up doing is just wrapping a towel around the whole thing to not covering obviously like the vent, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but wrapped it around there because the chicks just would pace and peck. And so maybe if you have this incubator or have tried it, let me know if you saw that as well, because I've never seen that before. And I thought it was just because they were so exposed that they kind of did that. And I did notice once I had just, I think it was like a flour cloth sack towel around there, they kind of calmed down. So it's nice that you can see really well. Might stress the chicks out a little. And also if you are a Freddy putsy person, you might not like that either necessarily, because I'm the sort of person that's like, oh my gosh, that chick, pipped yesterday. How come it's not doing anything else? Maybe we should help, and you really shouldn't help, obviously. So if you're the sort of person that frets a little bit, having greater visibility maybe isn't such a good thing either. So some other things that I really like about this incubator are the fact that it comes with a built-in candler right on top. So that way, if you need to check your eggs, or if you want to check your eggs as you go, which is a good idea as you are incubating to pull out the ones that have stopped developing, it's got a built-in candler right there. Another feature that I really like about this is that it has, for a vent, it's got this little doohickey right here. It's just a little window that opens and shuts. And so that way, I know a lot of the other incubators, again, not to talk smack about the big foam ones, because I know those work great and I've used those a lot, but those ones have that little plug that goes in there, which inevitably gets lost. And so it's nice just to have this little, it's really easy. You can make the adjustment within a fraction of an inch if you want to, especially as you're trying to control your humidity. That's another thing I really like about this particular incubator is it has a temperature gauge as well as a humidity gauge. And so you can set that however you want to, depending on what sort of eggs you are incubating and what point you are in incubation. As you get closer to that hatch date, it's better to have a higher humidity. So having that little window kind of helps you adjust for that. And of course, how you also adjust for humidity is right here on the incubator. Is it has, this is where you add the water to it, which is nice. It's a little tricky to pour into because it's really close to your countertop. So I found like a measuring cup that has a spout works the best. And so this, which of course I can't find it, everything should be attached. I'm the sort of person who, like little kids have those mittens that are clipped together. I should have that like with everything, because anything that's not clipped to the thing it's for, I'm losing it. So somewhere in my house, there's a little red piece that says B that covers this one. And so as the instructions tell you, you fill up the water in A, and then as you get closer to the hatch date, you take the plug out, and then you also fill the water in B to increase the humidity. So really simple, easy to follow steps. And I don't think it's a problem to not have that cover. It probably is letting some of the humidity escape, or maybe some of the water comes back out. I'm not sure, but I'll have to try and track that down eventually. One of the main reasons why I chose to go with this incubator is because it is made all of plastic. So the whole body part on the bottom, the turner itself, it's all made of plastic, and most turners are made of plastic, but the main body that the eggs are sitting on, the kind of little mesh part, as well as the thing that the water goes in, the whole thing is plastic. And so I have found after using the foam ones many times, those suckers are really hard to clean, and you don't ever really feel like you've done a good job. You don't want to scrub too hard because they are made of just like almost like a cooler sort of foam, so you don't want to like break it apart because it's this $100 and some incubator. So I love the fact that this is plastic, so it's really easy. The whole top you can just pop off, and then this bottom portion You don't want to completely soak it in water, but you can, fill it with water and then scrub it out really well with a brush or something, because it does have electrical components. You can't just plop the whole thing in the water, which would be nice, but it's much easier to clean than the foam ones are. So that was honestly my main reason for choosing this plastic bodied incubator, and it had really good reviews everywhere that I looked. So one other negative about this is when you do have it set for hatch days, if you lose power for whatever reason, let's say you unplug it or you lose electricity, one issue is that it does not remember how far it was. It just kind of starts right back over, and you can set it for any different amount of hatch days as you want. It will automatically stop turning 3 days before the set hatch date, and it automatically just goes for 21 days for chickens. And so I was doing guineas, which I think was 28 days, something like that, I want to say. And we lost power, I don't even know how many times. It was such a nightmare this spring. I'm amazed any of my guineas hatched at all, to be honest with you. But so I hadn't been paying attention to what day I had actually started them, so I had to kind of backtrack and do some detective work to figure out when I had started them. So when the power came back on and it got plugged back in, that I was able to set it for the correct amount of days, because otherwise it's just going to start right back at the beginning at 21 days or 28 days or whatever you had it set for. Now, one of the things that I did see people comment on as being a little bit of a negative of this device, and I would also agree, is that it can be a little bit tricky to make sure it is closed all the way. I mean, it's easy to tell that it is closed all the way, but it's just a little bit putsy to actually get that way. It just has a really small notch on each of the 4 sides. You have to make sure those are lined up to make sure it is closed properly. But if you just take the time to do it, it's not that big of a deal. And the only other thing that I wish this incubator had or was is I wish it was just a little bit bigger. I do like that it is smaller in size. It works out well for guineas and animals if you don't have a lot of them and you're collecting eggs and are going to do a smaller hatch. But it is nice, some of the larger units that you can do 44 eggs at a shot versus this is going to be half that amount. I would also say that the instructions it came with were clear enough to use it just fine, but there were just some more details that would have been nice. I always think it's handy on those things when they say, how to use this incubator for, if you're hatching quail or guineas or chickens, and kind of has some tips on all those different ones. It really didn't. It was just kind of, here's how you use the incubator, and the rest of it you're on your own. So it assumes you're an adult that, you know what your business is. But sometimes it's nice to have just a little bit of extra instruction on that. So instructions were fine, but they could have just been a little more thorough, I thought. Now, how did this thing do in terms of hatching? It did great. It really did well. Again, I think with having that temperature control and that humidity control, I chose not to have other sensors in there watching that, just because I didn't want to second guess things. I'm like, I'm just going to trust this thing is telling the truth. Remember one time I was traveling somewhere with my parents, and I was in my early 20s at the time, and we were in a different state, and then we had a rental car which had a GPS, and then my dad brought his Garmin, and then my mom had her cell phone, and all 3 of them were giving different directions, and they were trying to follow all 3, and the directions were all contradicting each other, and it was I think about that sometimes. It was absolute madness. And so I feel like if you had more than one sensor in here, you'd be like, well, which one's right and which one's correct? So I say just stick with its humidity sensor and stick with its temperature gauge and trust that it is accurate unless you're seeing some bad hatches. Now, in terms of how well this thing did, it's so hard to say if it's the machine, because there's so many things that can affect your hatch, right? It can be if the eggs were fertilized or not. It can be if the eggs are compromised or not, if they got too hot, if they got too cold, if you lost electricity, if the eggs had damage to them. There's all sorts of things that can affect your hatch rate. But I will say that this thing, it seemed to do really, really well. I did one hatch of guineas that was, I believe I had 11 eggs in there, and I had 8 that hatched. And did well. So that was really, I think, a pretty good success rate, especially for guineas, can be a little bit fickle sometimes. So overall, would I recommend? Yes, I think it is a very nice machine. I really like the ease of having the buttons you push versus some of the bigger foam ones don't even have buttons. They have like that little lever bar thing that you adjust like a fraction of a centimeter, So this is really nice. You just press your buttons, you set it, you're good. I love that it has that little door. I love that it's plastic and easy to clean. I love that it is small, that it looks nice, that you can store it away really easily. I like that it rotates your eggs for you and everything on your own without having to worry about it, and that it stops rotating them when it's time for them to be done as well. So overall, Nurture Right 360, 2 thumbs up. I highly recommend it. Let me know in the comments if you have an incubator that you like that's done really well for you, or if you have any questions about this unit. I am happy to answer them. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you here next week for more farming, family food, and fortitude here at our Rough and Tumble farmhouse.